Welcome back. You're in the now. One by one, Iraqi cities are falling to the radical extremist group, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. The Iraqi army is not coping. The current crisis has all the makings of a civil war, and the U.S. is now mulling direct talks with Iran to help. John Kerry has said American drone strikes are not off the table to help quell the spread of ISIS and their destruction. Some haunting pictures of executions by the jihadist group have emerged. Images online are, in fact, much worse. The group, which splintered off of al-Qaeda, is said to be more cold-blooded and extreme. Now, despite the clear evidence that Iraq has fallen apart since the U.S.-led British-backed invasion and subsequent withdrawal some 10 years later, some politicians are adamant that Western actions in Iraq have nothing to do with the current chaos, and it was the right decision.
You know, we can rerun the debates about 2003 and the perfectly legitimate points on either side. But where we are now in 2014, we have to understand this is a regional problem, but it's a problem that will affect us.
Yes, let's rerun those debates and call out Tony Blair's top bluffs on Iraq. This one we all know very well.
That Iraq has chemical and biological weapons. That Saddam has continued to produce them. That he has existing and active military plans for the use of chemical and biological weapons, which could be activated within 45 minutes.
No, he didn't. But after it became clear there were no WMDs, there was still an argument years later.
I would still have thought it right to remove them. I mean, obviously you would have had to use and deploy different arguments about the nature of the threat.
Deploy different arguments about the nature of the threat. I'm going to call that bluff. Blair basically said we would have found a different excuse.
The Iraqi people, whose only true hope lies in the removal of Saddam, for them, the darkness will simply close back over. They will be left under his rule without any possibility of liberation.
Liberation never came. In fact, many argue that as horrible as Saddam was, it was still better than what we're seeing today.
Now we want to give you the chance to rebuild your country, to rebuild your lives, to give your families a chance of that better future.
And a better future never came. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis are dead. That's a conservative estimate. And Tony Blair is still going on.
I've long since given up and tried to persuade people it was the right decision.
No, you haven't. Tony Blair spent most of the weekend trying to convince us that dragging Britain into Iraq wasn't a mistake. And what's more, action is needed again, and not only in Iraq, but in Syria as well. Joining us in the now is British MP George Galloway. He's a well-known fan of Mr. Blair. Why are former officials like Tony Blair and current ones like William Hague still defending Iraq? It's collapsing. Do they really think that the current situation has nothing to do with the invasion in 2003?
Well, there's a national consensus emerging here, stretching from the Mayor of London across Parliament and most of the media, including right-wing newspapers that supported the war at the time, that Mr. Blair may have become mentally unhinged. Certainly Einstein's definition of madness, namely that to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, means you're probably mentally unhinged, seems to apply here, because Mr. Blair was, as you said, this very weekend not only defending what he did, and there are precious few people anywhere in the world who will be found to come on television and defend that, but to say that we should do it again. Mr. Blair wants us to re-invade Iraq.
But it seems like Mr. Hague agrees with him.
Well, Mr. Hague said that we were right to invade Iraq. He's not saying we should invade it again. Blair is. Moreover, he's saying that we are only in this position because we didn't invade Syria. And here we come to the ultimate paradox of our times. Britain and the United States are supporting these al-Qaeda fanatics in Syria, which is only a couple of hours' drive away from their heartland in Iraq, whilst encouraging us to feel that the end of the world is coming when those al-Qaeda fanatics cross over into Iraq. Those of us who are against al-Qaeda, wherever they are of course being amply vindicated, because the pictures that you described, that the fanatics have put out themselves, I suppose we should be grateful that they're not yet eating people's hearts like they were doing, and videoing themselves for the entertainment of the world doing it, have not yet emerged from Iraq. But the hideous throat cutting and mass execution of people, the humiliation of people as they kill them, is emerging now from the fanatics themselves. But the truth is, this group, ISIS, used to be called the ISIL, they became strong and powerful because of Western monetary and so-called non-lethal military aid. These Toyota vehicles that they drove into Mosul in were given to them by the British and American governments, but across the border in Syria. This is the kind of madness that Western policy has become.
All right, British MP George Galloway with us live in the Now tonight from London. Thanks so much for your time.
Welcome.
American police in some cities are being heavily armed with military hardware made for war zones. Guess why? It's because there's tons of expensive gear left over from lengthy foreign campaigns. Here's Marina Portnoy on how some of it has not even been used, and the president and Pentagon